Hi, I'm James Brewer Calvert, and I was blessed to take a class on narrative nonfiction with Suzanne Van Atten through the Decatur Writers Studio. I decided to take this course because I enjoy writing and telling stories, and am fascinated in the sharing of stories and hearing other people's, and wanted to learn how to write my story and tell it in a way that folks could hear it and receive it. The way Suzanne Van Atten set it up is 9 students were in a room and tables around, so we were in a circular formation so everybody could see everyone else, and she would lead the class in the basics of narrative nonfiction, that everyone has a story to tell and everyone can tell their own story, and that we would be writing from our own truth. Everyone has their own understanding of the truth, and we would write our stories and then share it in the class. And so there was a collaborative effort to receive other people's stories and then to critique them in a very positive way. So she created an environment where people felt comfortable to tell their stories and to share their writings, and to acknowledge that we all can learn and grow through the process. A valuable lesson that I took from this class was that there's no such thing as good writing. There's only good rewriting. That the editing process and the paring down and the taking a story and cutting out the unnecessary parts or the parts that were confusing and getting right down to the heart of the matter is a process of engaging your own creativity, but also accepting critique, and then getting that story honed down so that it's tight. So the writing and the rewriting were very good. I learned a lot from that process. So I wrote an essay called Survivor about when I was diagnosed with cancer and underwent surgery and went through the process of healing from the surgery, and then the process of chemotherapy, and then going through that and coming out on the other side and becoming cancer-free. So I told that story, and it was 14 pages long, double-spaced, and shared it with the class and received all their critique, and then rewrote it, and it was down to about 12 pages, and lots more critique of that essay again, and then ended up with about a 10-page essay, maybe 11 pages of Survivor, and the class was very helpful in honing that down. At the end of the session, end of the 8 weeks, Suzanne Van Atten invited me to submit it to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She's the editor of the Personal Journeys section in the AJC. And so I did submit it, and it was accepted. At which point she then changed her hat and went from being a class teacher to a newspaper editor, and had to edit another 1,500 words from the essay. So it went from being about 4,000 words down to about 3,000, 2,500 words. And it did get published in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And as a result of sharing that story, I have received hundreds, literally hundreds of messages from people around the world thanking me for sharing my story, and then they have shared their own. So it's been a blessing for so many people. Everyone's got a story. Everyone has a story. And through the Decatur Writers Studio, you learn techniques and gifts and skills for and insights on how to tell your story. Not everyone is a great writer, but that's not the question. The question isn't about being great. The question is about being honest and sharing your story in a way that other people can hear it. It's both cathartic for you, therapeutic for you to tell your story, to get it out, and it's also helpful for others to hear it. The level of writing ability, if you will, in the class was quite varied, but every story was fantastic. We all needed to hear them and share them. I found it to be conducive to a number of skills I do elsewhere, and whether it's in public speaking or in communing with people in a coffee shop, and finding ways to communicate even better. So I found the process of working in and through the Decatur Writers Studio to be quite a help, not only in this part of my life, but in terms of writing, but also in terms of communications. So Mark Twain was someone who told stories, and a gentleman went to Hannibal, Missouri, and was on the streets of Hannibal, and which is where Mark Twain, i.e. Samuel Clemens, was from. And there was a guy sitting on the curb, and the tourist got to talking with this guy sitting on the curb, and the guy on the curb said, I grew up with Samuel Clemens, and we all had the same stories, and but the difference was that he wrote his down. When you write and get a chance to publish, you increase your sphere of influence. When you tell your story and share your story with others by writing it down and setting it down on paper or on a screen, you increase the sphere of influence you have. The guy sitting on a curb and Mark Twain grew up in the same neighborhood. They met all the same people, they had the same stories, but the difference was one person wrote them down. So I would encourage folks to take classes, to study, to learn, to practice, to write. Tell your story, share your story, and put it out there. See what happens. You never know the lives you touch and the influence you might have for the good. Thank you.